about establishing a code of ethics for municipal officers. We don't do a roll call, but I have been made aware that Councilmember Cease and Councilmember Casagrande are on the call. And then in the chambers, we have Councilmember Demas, Councilmember Osinga, Councilmember McClure, Vice Mayor Baclan, and myself as Christy Terry. So if everyone can look at actually the laydown ordinance, it has a couple changes, just taking a look at the language again. For the most part, it matches what was, sorry, there's a little bit of echo, what was in the packet. But, so I'll look to Councilmember Osinga, but I might just suggest that we just go through it section by section. Are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
And then if folks have specific questions, and then we can talk about, changing or striking, or I might just say that what's been done is, I know there was some work started with our previous city attorney, and then Councilmember Osinga and myself were working closely with Vianna in the city manager's office. And between Vianna and Councilmember Osinga, there were lots of codes from different communities around Alaska, different communities around the nation, and we just went through and kind of picked what we thought were maybe the best of all. There's probably a work in progress. We even found some more things under another city's, like what we have with the council rules of procedure. And there's a few other things, but we just want to get something started and in the books and then see where we go from there. So on the very first page, under the conflicts of interest, what was missing from the one in the packet is you'll see the strike through that says "and community hospital board members." The first ordinance that we have in the packet, that was just dropped. Where with this ordinance, it's still on our books in our code, so we'll have to strike that, and it just cleans that up. It's been 20 years, and that needed to be cleaned up. So that's the first change. And then number one, and I guess folks can interrupt me, and with questions or comments. The first one is city municipal officers. And that talks about, just being truthful in their actions, and it includes a definition of what city municipal officers include, and it's the mayor, council members, city manager, city clerk, city attorney, so it's our direct reports, and the Seward Planning and Zoning Commission, because they're our quasi-judicial body. And in different sections of the code, city municipal officers have a few different terms, so this just kind of calls it out specific to what we're doing here. And I think once this is adopted within the codification, there's some clarifying coming forward with the new codification review. So this one just basically says that we don't use our position to drum up business for ourselves or for our family or undue influence. And also for the purpose of influencing anything that we might have a substantial financial interest. So I'll just pause for a second and see if there's any comments or questions about this one. Okay, then the next one is number 2 is city municipal officers shall not use the implied authority of their office for undoing influencing decisions in the community. So, there's a couple influences, and this one's specific to the community. And that there's a little caveat with this, except unless expressly authorized to represent an official position of the city or the body of the city. So that's like when we go to Juneau, we obviously have the full force of the council behind us with the priorities that we're in Juneau advocating for. Yes?
Should it say something about when away like that they have to represent the official opinions of the body or something, because an individual got in trouble for going off on their own once like that. So does it kind of imply that or not? I have to read it again.
See if that last sentence covers that. Yeah. Unless expressly authorized to represent an official position of the city or a body of the city, municipal officers shall refrain from
Yeah.
implying their individual representation is that of the city of Seward by the use of their title.
I think that does it.
Does
Yeah,
that cover
I
it?
guess it does.
It's
It's
kinda-
kind of a lot of words to say that.
Yeah, it's kind of legalese to like, don't go rogue,
Right, that's
And-
kind of it.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, we can mull
It's
over
important.
that too, between now and then. Between now and when it
I have
comes.
a question.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I had my hand raised. I'm not sure if it could be seen or how that works, but you briefly stated at the beginning that we were going to define municipal officers. I know in the title it refers to the city manager being a municipal officer. What is the definition of a municipal officer? Is it just us, or are we talking about any administration as well?
So in number 1, the second sentence says, for purposes of this section, so specific to this section, city municipal officers shall include the mayor, council members, the city manager, the city clerk, the city attorney, and the Seward Planning and Zoning Commissioner. So that's who we have included, which, you know, that can be changed, but that's what we're proposing. And the reason why planning and zoning got included is because they're our quasi-judicial body as opposed to like PATCAB or HP that are purely advisory.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, so this, number 3 has to do with like lobbying. So the city officers shall not, for compensation, represent or assist those representing private businesses or personal interests before the city council, administration, borough board, or commission or agency. However, nothing herein shall prevent a municipal officer from making a verbal or written inquiries on behalf of constituents or the general public. So basically, you know, we, of course, in our roles, and even the city manager are going to advocate for things and businesses at different times because we believe it's important to the community. What this says is that we should not be doing that because we're getting a paycheck from them to do so. So it just limits us, you know, lobbyists get paid to do something. It just ensures that we're not lobbying on anyone's behalf because of compensation. Number 4 is, this has to do with confidential information concerning employees of the city, city property, city government, or other city affairs. You know, and that includes executive session, which we're pretty clear on, but, you know, it also has to do with, you know, anything within the law. You know, the city manager definitely is in private negotiations, private lease negotiations. So that, you know, that says that he's required to keep those things confidential. Obviously, there's also Public Meetings Act and different things that would you know, supersede this, but there's also times when there's confidentiality required. And Rissy, I can't see if you raise your hand, so you can definitely just go ahead and speak up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then number 6 is for 1 year after leaving the office, city municipal officers shall not hold any compensated city office, which we have that, you know, it's just so we don't create a golden parachute for ourselves. And that's already in code briefly, but I think it's the other way. I think city oh, no. You can't be a city employee and be on council, but then there is also another place that says, this just kind of tightens it up and puts it in this section.
Back to number 5.
Oh, back to number 5? Okay.
You missed it.
Oh, did I miss number 5? Okay, thank you. So, like, how tedious is this? Is this worth it that we're going through it line by line? I'm doing a lot of talking. Is it too tedious? Okay, thank you. Number 5, city municipal officers may not engage in business or accept employment or serve as a state elected or appointed official. So this again, you know, just wants to make sure that clearly, I don't know how best to explain this, but this just makes clearly that you're not doing 2 roles. Like you're not working at the state level and then at the city level. So it just kind of keeps your role as a council member or city manager or P&Z commissioner pretty solid and pretty sole. Number 7, city municipal officers shall not. Yep. Go. Can you try again? We just couldn't understand you.
On number 5.
Yes.
We can make sure.
Bad connection.
It's a bad connection. Does Rissy have the Zoom function? Could she type in
The
the chat?
one that you just said about. Yeah, I think it was number 5 you were just going through, correct?
Hey Rissy,
Or was it
Rissy, we really can't understand you. So maybe,
number 5?
yeah.
Can you explain that just a little bit better about, I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
So Rissy, I'm gonna interrupt you. Yeah, Rissy, I'm gonna interrupt you. I was really trying to, but we just can't decipher what you're saying.
I was just asking for clarification on number 5.
Okay, so maybe offline or before this comes back to council, we'll have the attorney look at number 5 and just clarify that. Does that sound good, John?
I didn't hear what she said,
I
so
don't
I'm
have a
sorry.
clue.
No, I know, but it sounds like it's surrounding, I don't know what it is either, but I think it's surrounding number 5. So if there's questions, we can just have the attorney look at it. Yeah.
I guess I don't want to
She lost.
mention names, but there might. What is this state? Is state different from borough? And
Yeah.
if they're on a borough board, can you still serve on the city board?
You can't, I can speak to that. You cannot be on the borough assembly and hold another office. I was the deciding vote on that, so I know
guess
that
what I'm concerned is
the other way around. So you could not be on city council and borough assembly by their rules. That's all
so
I know.
what I'm asking, I think, is borough planning and zoning board.
Well, this
Oh,
says,
you have to be.
Yeah,
I can speak to that
engage
too.
Okay.
as a state elected or appointed
Right.
official, so
Okay.
it's pretty specific to the state.
Yeah, our city representative on planning and zoning is also on the borough
Yeah.
assembly.
I just want to make sure that that doesn't
Planning
affect
and
that.
zoning. Right. I don't think so because that's their rule.
Okay.
That they have to be.
They have to be.
I-
Oh, to be on the borough side. Okay, good.
They have one of our
Yeah,
planning and zoning people unless that's changed, yeah.
that's a
so-
good thing. I just didn't want to make
Yeah, I know
sure
what
that
you're
this wasn't
saying.
gonna
Um,
affect that.
Circumvent that.
Yeah.
right.
Which, and I don't know if that's even an issue for us.
It says state anyways.
Yeah, it's specific to state. You know, I don't even know if it has ever been an issue for us that someone on council ran for state office and wanted to serve at the state time, but, or was appointed to a statewide fisheries board or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Number 7, city municipal officers shall not accept a gratuity from any person engaging in business with council or having a substantial financial interest in a decision pending towards the city. So it's basically like you can't, it's getting graft. You can't get bribed. Except it doesn't prohibit a meal, like if you're going to lunch with someone, discounts or prizes that are generally available to the public or large sections, gifts presented by an employer to its employees in recognition of a service or civic or public awards, a lawful campaign contribution made to a candidate for public office, an occasional gift of insignificant value, or any gift that would have been offered or given to the officer even if the officer were not a municipal officer. So, you know, that covers, like, just because my husband works for GCI, if he gives me a birthday present, like, that doesn't preclude me from, you know, serving on council. Number 8, municipal officers may not use, request, or permit the use of city vehicles, equipment, materials, or property for any non-city purpose, including but not limited to private financial gain. So, like, you know, the city manager can't rent out the vehicles to get money himself or money herself, unless that use is available to the general public on the same terms. And this does not prohibit de minimis personal use. So,
What does de minimis mean?
I think it's like insignificant, like
Okay.
like the city manager's
I just wondered if
vehicle.
people could.
Like if the city manager stops at Cars on the way home, like, I mean, he's able to, you know, do those little errands using the city vehicle. And I think we have a policy for city vehicle use already.
Yeah, so you stop at the post office and you stop at the store on the way home, things like that.
Number 9, an employed municipal officer may not take active part in a non-city sanctioned political campaign or other political activity when on duty. So, but nothing herein shall be construed as preventing such municipal officers from exercising their voting franchise, contributing to a campaign or candidate of their choice, or expressing their political views when not conspicuously representing the city. So I couldn't, as the mayor, appear in someone's commercial and say, as the mayor of the city of Seward, I endorse this person for governor.
But you could appear in an ad endorsing them?
As
You
myself.
didn't say you were a mayor?
That's what this
I mean,
says.
that,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So, or like if we had a meeting here and, you know, someone came and I said, you know, in council comments, I want Mickey Mouse to win the, you know, KPB governor, KPB mayor, then that wouldn't be allowed either during the council meeting. City municipal officers must dress in business casual attire at council meetings. Business casual is defined as relating to or denoting a style of clothing that is less formal than traditional business wear, but is intended to give a professional and business-like impression, which I think would have pretty broad interpretation, but.
So I have an issue with that just because I work a lot and my job, my business job is not business attire. And it is sometimes close to where I have to be here right when I'm finishing my job to come here or getting off my job to be here. So I do disagree with this one. I know for some people it is easier to, get changed or whatever, but I try sometimes to look nice.
Well, I feel like you're super coordinated tonight. Asking your shirt.
And then there are times when I have my apron on and I
Yeah,
forget
yeah.
that, I do understand that it is, we come here to do the business of the people, and respecting that by wearing appropriate clothes is important. However, sometimes it is hard for me to do that in my scenario, and I think to promote council and diversity in our council, I would like to see this one removed, or maybe say try to when.
How about council,
should attempt or
how about
something.
city municipal officers strive to dress in business?
Sure.
Should strive
Or should strive?
to dress? Or we need something in there.
Or should try to dress?
Yeah, or something like that.
And I don't know, Councilmember Osinga, I don't know if you have any comments about.
I can sympathize. I get off work sometimes, but I try to get home and get changed. I can sympathize with Vice Mayor's comments there. And just making it a little less, with, should try or what you had suggested, I think would help.
And sometimes it might be, I don't know, and if we have a work session or something in the middle of the day, other people
That's different.
might have different types of work clothes.
Well, the other thing is, say there's an emergency, we might have an emergency meeting in the middle of an emergency, and we're definitely not going home and putting on our
And this
business
is council meetings, not work sessions too, so.
Yeah,
we
oh yeah,
could
it does
narrowly
say.
interpret it as just the evening council meetings except, right. Yeah,
So city municipal officers should try to dress, is that good? I mean, I hear what you're saying too, I mean, people dress differently at work and, there's nothing wrong with wearing, with having a job where you wear work clothes that get dirty. I mean, that's an honest day's work. Well, maybe we'll think about that one and talk to you about the rewrite. Number 11, city municipal officers may not place items on the dais in such a manner as to outwardly display to the public anything of an ideological nature, based on or relating to the system of ideas and ideals, especially concerning economic or political theory and policy. So, like you can't have I don't want to pick on a business, like you can't have a sign for a business or, oh,
yeah, there you
See
go.
that?
Or a sports team. Ideologic.
And that was more, that had to do more with, the borough, this maybe is not a great comparison, but they definitely have, an invocation prior to their meeting, and, that's really gone off the rails in that you have to, allow spaghetti monster and, everything. So once people start this, then it just opens up a can of worm, which we've never had a problem with it, but it was just something that we found. Go ahead.
I have a suggestion for 10 to
Yeah.
amend it to say city municipal officers are strongly encouraged
Oh, yeah,
to dress in business casual attire.
Okay, that's great. That's perfect, that solves it. So, number 12, city municipal officers may not attempt to influence another municipal officer's vote or position on a particular item through contact with the municipal's officer, employer, or by threatening financial harm to another municipal officer. I think that's pretty clear. A city manager okay, so this is important to me because we, haven't in the past had the city manager outlined with a substantial financial interest. So that's the start of this. And this goes, a city manager who has or may have a substantial personal or substantial financial interest in an official action shall disclose the facts concerning those interests to the city council prior to taking official action. If the council determines the manager has a substantial personal or substantial financial interest in the action, the council shall excuse the manager and assign another city employee to the matter. The city administration may adopt written policies setting forth additional standards and requirements for excusing the manager and assigning another city employee to the matter. Such written policies will be approved by the city council. So that just, I think, also helps our city managers. And sets up a system for that where we're not allowed to direct other city employees. This would put a policy in place where the city manager could step back on something and then have someone else take care of that. And then 15, perhaps the most fundamental role of the council member is communication. Council members will communicate with the public to assess community opinions think that's the right word, assess community opinions and needs and to share the vision and goals of the city with constituents, and will also communicate with staff to provide policy direction and to gain an understanding of the implementations of various policy alternatives. So this was actually found in more like a council rules of procedure, and it just so clearly outlines, you know, what our jobs are, what we do, you know, talking to people, talking to our constituents, and then also bringing it back to staff, you know, to help, you know, with that, you know, almost the liaison position between the public and the administration. So it's a little bit less. Go ahead.
Can I say something here?
Please.
You're gonna have to renumber these, I think, because number 13 is missing. The number 13.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I want to check and make sure assess is the right word in there.
Oh, I think,
Is that the correct usage of that? It just
I
looks
think so.
different. So, you know, it's a little less prescriptive than the other things, but it just helps kind of clarify, just roles and, you know, just kind of helps people understand what we do. Okay, now 16 got a little wonky, and this has to do with city letterhead, which you'd think it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but this goes back to when we represent ourselves, we should only be representing what the body has approved. So, I might just read it out loud in its entirety. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so members of the city council will often be called upon to write letters to citizens, businesses, and other public agencies. Typically, the mayor will be charged with transmitting the city's position on policy matters to outside agencies on behalf of the city council. So I'll just pause and say that's like when we approve a letter here, I'm the one that typically signs it. So individual members of the council will often prepare letters for constituents in response to their inquiries or to provide requested information. City letterhead is available for this purpose and should, so it's required to be coordinated through the city clerk and or the city manager to ensure appropriate retention. So anything we send out as a council needs to be retained. You know, so that can be searched later. Did you have a question about that, John?
I was gonna say, is should really a strong enough word? Should that be more like shall?
Must
Shall or
and
must?
shall. Okay, shall.
Just,
And shall be, okay. Shall be coordinated through the. On occasion, members may wish to correspond on an issue on which the council has yet to take a position, or about an issue for which the council has no position. In these circumstances, members should clearly indicate that they are not speaking for the city council as a whole, but for themselves as one member of council. City letterhead and office support may, so it's possible, be utilized in these circumstances in collaboration with the city clerk and or city manager. City letterhead should be reserved for official city business only and not for personal use. So do you want to say city letterhead shall be reserved there also? Like instead of should, have shall?
that would,
No.
I guess that would keep it in line, I suppose.
Or would it be, I guess should, okay, well, let's think about that. And then council members may occasionally be asked to prepare letters of recommendation for students or others seeking employment or appointment. It is appropriate for council members to utilize city letterhead and their council titles for such letters. And this should be coordinated through the city clerk and or city manager to ensure appropriate retention. So it should,
Do you want that to be shall as well?
yeah,
If it has to be, it should be shall.
yeah. Where's that one? So it just tightens up, you know, that we're not writing letters. Do you have something?
Tell me what the yellow is as opposed to not yellow, because I
So
don't
the
have
yellow
original.
was the changes from
That's
the.
new,
Yeah,
that's new,
yeah.
okay. I just didn't bring out the other, okay.
So and maybe, you know, this is something probably the city clerk has a lot to do with, like, how, Brenda, does this read for you as keeper of our records?
I just thought that meant something different in the middle,
Okay,
where, because before you said, I mean, it's in the rules already, but you're clarifying that not one person can go, they can't go rogue,
yeah,
you said, right?
yeah.
I read that to mean that if you're speaking for yourself and not on behalf of the whole body, because the body hasn't taken it up as an issue yet, that you should just be saying it personally and not on city letterhead and not as an official record of the city. So
when it
I
says-
might have misread that, but that's the way I took it.
So this says city letterhead shall be reserved for official city business only and not for personal use. So if we write something saying, oh, here's a recommendation for so-and-so to go to UW, we should not, this says we will not be able to use city letterhead for that.
So, yeah, well,
But it
that's
says
what,
you can.
that's just my impression of it. So if you wanted to write a letter of recommendation, no, it wouldn't come before council,
Right.
but you wanted to say you were the mayor of Seward and you strongly endorse this individual. I don't know that anyone would take exception to that, because you want to use that as, you know, to help them with the letter of recommendation, but it's not a position of the whole body. But you would, I would think you'd be sending it on your own.
Yeah, and not use city
Stationary.
letterhead. Yeah,
And it would, and that's not really an issue that would come before council anyway. So,
so that's how it reads in here, isn't it, though? Like that read, city letterhead shall be reserved for official and not for personal use. Does it just get
the tricky
confusing
part
because-
is that little phrase that says hasn't come before council.
Mm.
Yeah, because that's the difficult. Until you know that you're free to speak on something. I'm just worried about getting into an area that does come before council, and if you have spoken in an official capacity, I don't know.
So maybe that last sentence should just get stricken in its entirety.
It is contradictory because it says you can use city letterhead to recommend people, but you can't use city letterhead right before that. So
Yeah.
that's not official city business if I recommended somebody for a job.
Yeah, so this is kind of cut and pasted from a few, and I'm not sure we quite got there. I think what we're trying to say is that you should only use city letterhead for, maybe it's getting too complicated. Maybe it just really needs to say you should only be using city letterhead for correspondence that the body has approved, basically.
Yeah, do you need that middle section at all?
No,
Could I just ask how many of you have used city letterhead for anything?
I've
In
never.
5 years, I never have.
never.
So I'll tell you, Willard used to be a big fan. He used to do a lot of correspondence. And he would, it would be something that would come for council for conversation, discussion, or some item, and he'd sort of get the nod, and then he'd draft a letter as a follow-up. Or he would send letters that were promoting Seward. Hey, I want you to be aware that Seward has something coming up in the future, to call your attention to. Not expressing like a council position, but he would do a lot of outreach and try and marketing the city. And then on occasion, when Jean Barterson was the mayor, I have these little note cards that were our city, and so she would sometimes write notes, like thank you notes.
Oh,
and
I
that kind
have
of,
written thank you notes.
and that
Like-
kind of thing.
Like after we went to Juneau, people that saw us, I hand wrote thank you notes for seeing us.
Was that on city letterhead?
It was on those note cards that
Oh,
would have a city seal.
ones. Oh,
So that's
That
the
is
kind
a
of
thing.
thing that I've seen go through. Yeah.
So maybe, would the council have any objection if maybe I worked with the clerk on this and what would make it a lot clearer and what we're trying to accomplish? I guess what I'm trying to accomplish is that people don't go rogue and they're not, it sounds like it's not necessarily a problem, but just since we're doing it
Well, now that
ethics.
you mention it.
Yeah.
Can I get some of those cards? No.
I'm like, oh, I do, right, you know, like I just felt like it was appropriate when, you know, when we went to Juneau and saw
Oh,
those
yeah.
people, just to say thank you
Yeah.
for your time with
Yeah.
us. But
Yeah, I don't know that a thank you note
really
rises
counts.
to the
Yeah.
level, but, you know, I don't know.
So, but does the council here generally understand what we're trying to do? I think it makes sense to, okay.
I think it just needs to be tightened up.
Tightened up.
Really a lot.
And then, the last one, and we'll have to renumber, as Councilmember Cease noted, the city council delegates to the city manager the responsibility to discuss with any council member on behalf of the full council any perceived or inappropriate influence or encroachment on administrative services. The city manager will discuss with the council member the action and suggest a more appropriate process or procedure. After this discussion, if inappropriate action continues, the city manager will report the concern to the full council. So clearly, if unknowingly someone oversteps the line, the city manager and that person can have a discussion, clarify it, and then bring it to council if it raises to that level. And then the final thing is under, like, I think for years, it's been a little like trying to nail Jello to a tree what substantial financial interest really means. So we were trying to come up with a definition, and we were able to find examples in other cities. And a substantial financial interest means a financial interest that would result in a fiduciary gain or loss exceeding $1,000 in a single transaction, or more than $5,000 in the aggregate in 12 consecutive months. So, and that's pretty specific and even lower than, I think the other one that John and I looked at was not even it didn't have the $1,000, but it had the $5,000 aggregate in 12 consecutive months. So we really tightened it up. Just to get it out there. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah,
Was there any other justification for the numbers that you came up with?
I know.
Was it just, from the examples of other?
It was just from the examples. I mean, maybe our, maybe our risk level, or, maybe our temperance level is, $500 in a single transaction, or
I don't have a clue.
$2,500 over 12 months. It kind of just depends.
So you think lower than these amounts?
I just wanted to know
Oh, is it-
where the numbers came from, and
It was just, we just looked at a number of examples, and that was kind of the running theme. Did you have a different number you wanted to put out, or?
no, I didn't know where the numbers, like if it was just, that was what other municipalities had, or that was what maybe advice from our attorneys, or I just didn't know.
I mean,
where it
the
came from.
attorney's seen it. I mean, we could, I think we could definitely say 500 in a single transaction, or, which would be, and leaving it at 5,000 would be, less than 500 a month. I just don't know.
Your financial disclosure forms, your
Yeah.
annual forms, does or 5,000 seems to be the tipping point on that, so,
So 5,000
year.
for the
for
Yeah.
over the course of a year.
year. So that number jives.
But maybe the 500 instead of 1,000?
Okay.
I don't really have a feeling for it, because I can't envision myself in that position,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Well, if we do.
I guess like for an example, I would say before, when I had my own business, like, and voting on Sea Life Center things, right?
Oh, sure.
In a year, I would be under 5,000, but in an instance, I would be over 1,000
Oh, okay.
on certain things. So, but it depends too, because that they recommend from other vendors, so I would be hired by somebody else, not necessarily the Sea Life Center sometimes. So, and that's just food, so I guess I think 500 might seem a little bit better for an instance. But I do see like that 5,000 at the cap for the year is
That's fine.
pretty.
Because if it was, you know, you could be at, I'm pulling out my phone to check my calculator. So say you were, so yeah, I mean, you could get, let's see, 450. Yeah, I mean, you could have 425 a month and still you'd be over the cap. So it'd be like, you could have say a gain of 400 a month, which would be under the 500 per instance, would still be under the 5,000. But once you hit the 500 in a single transaction, if that was happening every month, you'd be over the 5,000. So we could do 500 and 5,000. Go ahead.
Well, I think that what this is doing is it's taking a one-time example versus an example over 12 months.
Yeah.
So they're two different things. I
Yeah,
think the
that's
one-time example is at $1,000. Anything less, then it's not really a conflict according to the way this is written. But over 12-month time, it takes that smaller amount and says, hey, if you're
It's
going to
built
add,
up.
this is going to add up to 5,000 a year, then that's a conflict. So I think they're two different instances because you might have somebody who can gain, you know, $1,000 once and that's it. I mean, so I think that's the way it reads to me, the way it's written.
Yeah.
So they're two different, in my view, they're two different things.
I was just trying to get a comparison of what
Sure,
that would be.
sure.
So how do you feel about lowering it to 500?
Well, that would be difficult. I mean, that's a much lower number for a one-time transaction. I mean, if someone just gains $600 in one time, but and then the 5,000, of course, is what is our disclosure is amount.
Yeah.
Our amount is. So, I mean, 500 works, 1,000 works. I'm not sure that, you know, 500 would definitely cover a lot more.
Yeah.
More one single time transactions for sure. So,
And remember, we're talking about a substantial financial interest. So it's not just a financial interest, it's a substantial financial interest. So is a one-time transaction of $500 substantial?
And the person would still have to declare a potential and have a ruling. So it doesn't mean you're definitely gonna have a conflict. It depends on the circumstances. Is that?
I would say 1,000. I think 500 is too low.
Well, let's leave it at 1,000, and we could always amend it that night. We'll look at more examples and see what we find. So I guess, you know, in 10 minutes, is there anything missing? Do we have anyone on the line to provide comments?
We do have a citizen with their hand raised. And Councilmember Casagrande looks like she was able to come back in and join us on the phone.
Okay. So let's give our citizen a chance, and then we'll get Councilmember Casagrande for final comments.
Okay, so Linda Paquette has her hand raised.
Hello?
We can hear you, Linda. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just had a couple of things. Even though TACAB and Historic Preservation are advisory only, I really feel like they should be given this. So maybe it could say, even though TACAB and Historic Preservation are advisory only, they shall also abide by this code of ethics. I'm kind of aware of some times where some people on some of those advisory boards have maybe overstepped their bounds. So that's one thing. And then maybe in terms of the dress code, council members whose jobs and schedules that make the dress code difficult may ask for a formal waiver. Maybe that would be something you could consider, so that, because as people are considering running for office, you know, you'd hate to have someone not run because they saw that and they knew that, gee, these council meetings start at 7 and I get off work at 6:45 and I'm not going to be dressed. Just a thought. And then the thing about the financial interest, in the discussion, it seemed like you were really talking about council members, but you've got to remember that that's also going to cover people like the city manager. And I think because this town has so many different venues between the harbor and the railroad and the tourism and fishing, that it's really important that position in particular, I mean, council as well, but I would make the suggestion that you have it be $500 in an incident and no more than $1,000 for the year, because it's not right that anybody should be making money, and $5,000 seems like a substantial amount of money to me.
Substantial.
In a year, if you're adding that, you could look at your job and go, oh well, I'll make another $5,000 because I could do this on the side. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Let's check with Councilmember Casagrande and see if she wants to make any comments. Is she able to?
She's active and unmuted.
I guess I just have questions.
Making my public comments.
I can address them to you personally later. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, and I do want to bring up, so the last whereas also, folks want to read through the whereases, but the last one does say, it is not the intent of this ordinance to set unreasonable barriers that will serve only to deter aspirants from public service. So definitely these are, kind of guidelines just to control our, to set a standard above and beyond for ourselves and not deter other people from actually running. So I have a question for you, Madam Clerk. Does P&Z fill out our APOC paperwork?
Yes, planning and zoning is required to.
But does HP and CAT-CAB?
No, they are not required.
Okay.
That's what the difference.
So that's a difference. And then, so I guess I'll ask council, is anything missing that you'd like to see? Which I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but maybe it's something we can mull over. Is there anything missing that should be included? And maybe this is, kind of something to start thinking about, or, and we can bring it back to when this comes before us as it'll first be introduced and then we'll have a public hearing. And I guess, I've talked a lot, but Councilmember Osenga's been a big part of this. Is there anything you want to specifically point out or say?
No, you did a very good job of going through this, and thank you for all your work on it.
And the city attorney has had a first blush at it. We'll have to have him take another look at it. And then the clerk and I will work on the language. And then I'll talk to Councilmember Casagrande. I'll check with her this week and see if there's something specific that she has concerns or questions about. And we'll bring this back to the body when it's ready.
Right.
But if there's questions between now and then, let's throw them out there, and then we'll bring it back as appropriate. Not in violations of the Open Meetings Act, but let's make sure there's something that needs to be routed through the clerk or the city administration to make sure it's on the record. Just checking in one more time. Any other comments?
Nope.
Okay, well with that, I will adjourn our work session.
6:47.